All right, welcome back here to the Gill Athletics Connections Podcast. I am so humbled to be your host, Mike Cunningham. Uh, I have a weird biz dev. I don't know what the heck my title is. I'm the podcast guy. That's what most people call me around here. And just so excited that you would press play today. It's one of my favorite weeks of the year. Both relay meets this week are just really special to me, and we're celebrating this week with the Penn Relays coming up. I'm actually, if you're listening to this right now, I'm probably there at the Penn Relays for the whole week, and just super excited. And so I always like to kind of dig in and find the people behind those meets. We've had Aaron Robeson, the assistant director of the Relays, on the podcast a couple of years ago. Last year we had the head coach of Penn, who's also the director of Penn Relays, Steve Dolan. And this year I'm super excited to those guys were great, but now we're going to talk to the person who really does the work here. Help me welcome officially, her title is Director of Ops of the Penn Relays. We're going to find out that means she's the executioner. She does everything. She executes the whole thing, executes people. I don't know. We'll find out. Help me welcome the wise, the wonderful Miss Claire Hewitt. Claire, how are you today?
I'm great. It almost feels like spring, which is good news for us.
Yeah, that's right. Hey, you're in Philadelphia. I'm in Illinois. Amen. Trust me. And I'm from Alabama, so I can't stand this cold weather stuff, man. I'm much more happier when the weather's nice. Absolutely. Um, Claire, before we hit record, I have to kind of tell people what you did. Claire was late for her interview today, and not probably 99% of the people are never late, or maybe they're a minute or 2 minutes late or something like that. But Claire gave me the best excuse I've ever heard. And I say excuse, it was the reality. You were having so much fun on your run this morning. You got carried away, is what you said. What in the world are you out there running for? How'd you get carried away? That is foreign to me. I would never get carried away running.
Um, so I still run. The longer the better. Which is how that happens, I suppose. uh, it's just a steady run. And I live in I'm a quarter mile in several different ways from the biggest, best trail system in Philadelphia. So for those of us who fall victim to such a thing, it's easy to get carried away
That's a
running
good way
around
of putting that. Yeah. You
here.
said the longer the better. And I'm like, no. I mean, unless someone's chasing me. And even then, I'm just like, all right, look, you win. Like if Freddie or Jason or someone's chasing me, it's like, all right, bro, you win. Just let's take me down. Let's get out of here.
I honestly, so I was planning to go 9, and then I thought as I left, I should probably cut it at 8, and then that flew right out the window, and I forgot that I had that thought. So we went 9.
Well, I love it. You are fully excused. That is a great and valid excuse. If someone's out there working out, it's kind of hard, for a guy who works for a track company, it's kind of hard to, wag my finger. So that's a pretty good excuse. I like that. Now every future guest who hears that is going to tell me, "Oh, Mike, I'm sorry. I got lost on my 10 miler." I'm like, "Bro, no, I don't think so. Come on, come on, come on." Well, Claire, super excited to jump in and learn your history. We've met a couple of years ago. I think at convention was the first time we met, and then at the Penn Relays last year, got to sit down and kind of talk with you a little bit about some of the things that you do for this track meet. And it's always fascinating to me, these huge track meets like Penn, what any little decision, how great of a change that can affect. And so for someone in your role, I'm interested in kind of unpacking that a little bit and kind of, behind the curtain, the Wizard of Oz style, a little bit of like, hey, so why, when a coach wants to do this, and when you're making a decision to do that, how does that affect the entire gamut? So I'm interested to get into that. Before we do, though, I want to learn more about you. So why don't you take us back in the Wayback Machine here? Where does track and field start for you?
So track and field, I didn't run track and field until high school.
Hmm.
And I actually didn't run cross country until college. But I ran. Uh, Probably more in that, oops, I got carried away on my runway. Um, I grew up playing soccer and then now for anyone who's younger and wasn't growing up in the 80s, it's important to just remember this was a different decade. So I like had a hobby of rollerblading. So I would rollerblade, and I think I like to go out and just do it for a long time, and I think it probably made my parents nervous, and so I had a babysitter who would go rollerblading with me. And and then she also ran. So sometimes I'd just go for a run with my babysitter.
Huh.
I think it was like my equivalent of like when the boys are climbing the wall and breaking things in the house, you send them outside. I think that
Yeah.
was the equivalent for me. Like go for a run with Susan. And um and I think I fell in love with it. Like we would be running, but also just having a conversation. It was like hanging out, but also active enough to be exciting,
Yeah.
interesting, challenging, whatever it was. And so I for my so I have a my birthday is in the middle of the summer. I have a twin brother, mid-August birthday. So we went a lot of years, childhood years without a big birthday party. It's like the couple of weeks that everyone's always gone. No one's around. So when we were turning 10, we said, enough of this. We want a birthday party. We'll do it when we're 10 and a half. So middle of February, had a big slumber party. And the best gift I got that year was a pair of iridescent blue leggings that I still had when I got to college. I mean, they didn't make kids leggings at this point, right? They were definitely a foot too long for me when I got them. Um, but after staying up all night eating candy, I told my friends that when the sun rose, we were going for a run. I put on my new leggings and made them run around the block with me.
And lost all your friends that day.
Amazingly, no.
I'd been good friends with your twin brother and been like, your sister's weird. What do you mean we're going for a run? No way, man. Where's the video games? That's what I would have been yelling for. That's fascinating. Where did you? So where's this taking place? Like, I'm trying to think of a place where you could just go run for
Yeah.
with your babysitter and stuff like that.
West Philly.
Oh, so you're wow.
I grew up probably 1,000 meters from Penn. Yep.
Wow, is that right? Oh, that's so interesting. Okay, that's
Yep.
cool. And you mentioned you didn't run cross country until college. Is that because soccer was in the fall? Because you said you played
Yeah.
soccer.
So I grew up playing soccer and that was definitely my primary identity through high school.
Oh,
Um, I went to a small school and cross country wasn't very cool.
mhm.
They had trouble fielding a whole team. So I think most of the years I was in high school, they didn't even have a full team.
Yeah.
I started running in high school to stay in shape for soccer and lacrosse, and I never made it to lacrosse season. So
Is that right? That's a common theme. I think we hear that a lot, where our sport in general is the secondary sport to stay in shape for basketball or soccer or football and things like that. And then
I
many
think,
people find
yeah.
out it's actually their primary sport.
Yeah, I think from somebody who was sort of watching from the outside or anyone really paying attention, they could have picked it up quicker than I did. That this was the direction I was probably heading, like had a tough soccer practice or was, came finished the soccer practice and was feeling unfinished or mad about something and I just drop my stuff at the track and run, like it's so it was it has, I think before I was even fully conscious of it, running has been sort of my outlet, my sanity, my happy place.
Was there, that's super interesting. Were your parents runners? Did you, when you were 5, you got gifted for some weird reason a subscription to Runner's World? You read Once a Runner, like where, like that. I mean, it's a natural, we're human, so we're naturally instinctively to run. But many of us feel it's a punishment. And that's why we steer to other sports sometimes. You seem to like the whole natural, like I'm a runner, and you just like almost like the Forrest Gump. I just started running and I just never stopped kind of thing. Where does that like where did that passion come from? Was your babysitter a college runner or anything like that? Where's this coming from?
No, no, I think I just felt good doing it.
Hmm.
Like I have often said, especially as I've continued running, after
Hmm.
the traditional high school, college competitive life,
Hmm.
I have often said, if running were as hard for me as it appears to be for some people who I see out on the roads running, I don't know that I would do it so much.
Oh,
It's fun. It's fun to do it until it's hard, right? It's fun to challenge myself, but I think there's this underlying like if you told me to go for an easy run, I wouldn't look at you like you were crazy. I know what that means, right? And there are some people who aren't runners or haven't always been runners, you say go for an easy run and they say, "Excuse me, what?"
yeah. No,
Like
no run is easy, right?
yeah, exactly, exactly. Yeah, so I think it was just this like that that it is natural, is there is a place where it can just be easy and happy and fun.
Yeah, well, that's cool. At least in high school, were you more like distance runners to me are kind of split in half, at least in the high school side. Were you more like 8 mile or more like 2 mile? Like were you more of the distance or more of a, kind of had some speed with you?
Well, I think probably two reasons, because my background was soccer, and so that's
Yes, I
how they
was
saw
wondering.
me.
Hmm.
And because we had a very small team. I think one year we had 10 girls, one year we had 12 girls for like a full track team.
Hmm.
Um, and so I've done everything other than the discus, the shot put, and the high jump.
Oh yeah. So you did
Yeah.
you kind of like,
So we
hey, I
did,
need you to long
yeah.
jump today. And yeah.
There were years I long jumped, I triple jumped, I pole vaulted, I threw the javelin,
Yeah.
I hurdled. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, which is an important part of the next step, but
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, well,
yeah.
exactly, exactly. Did
Uh,
you was there another event? And you might have actually kind of just answered that. Was there another event besides the distance that you were like, if I was a little taller or a little faster or stronger, I'd be a shot putter or anything that you're like, man, that's kind of fun, but I know I'm a distance person.
well, so I probably thought of myself more as an 800 miler in high school. And
Hmm.
again, in part because I went to such a small school in such a small league. So I had success, even though on many a larger stage, I would have not.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, and I did like the 300 hurdles we hurdled. I really enjoyed the pole vault and the triple jump. I
Yeah,
wasn't good enough at them to continue.
yeah,
They were always sort of dropped by the time we got to champs. Um, and honestly, I think because I never figured out how to do it, if I could pick one thing to do and be good at, it would be the high jump.
yeah,
I think it's super cool, and it just totally bends my brain.
yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
that was one of my favorite events to coach. I do love the high jump, that's for sure. A lot of complexities and frustrations in that event because you don't get to pick the bar, so you don't get to pick the PR like some other events. Anyway, okay, so talk to us about senior year. You're looking at colleges. Where did you go? And more importantly, I always like to ask this because I assume as a 17, 18-year-old high school senior, you weren't like, you know what? I want to be the director of ops of Penn Relay. I just feel like that's not something any 17, 18-year-old kid does. So what were you thinking as you went into college? Where'd you go and what were you thinking about being professionally?
So I went to Penn, and I mean, I do look back and think that it was a lucky experience in that I applied early in the fall. I got my acceptance packet in the mail back in the days where it just, landed in the mail. There was no preview,
All right.
no portal to click on. Um, I got it the day that my parents said, if you do not get accepted today, you must start your other applications.
Oh, so you only applied to
So I
Penn.
only applied to Penn.
Wow. Is that right now? Okay, so we hear this, we tell ourselves stories sometimes and it becomes lore at that point. We tell ourselves that kids don't want to go to school with the hometown Florida State says, Tallahassee kids, they don't want to stay here, they've been there their whole lives and they go on, et cetera, et cetera. That story's been told a million times. You grew up, it sounds like you could almost throw let's say a javelin and hit Penn. I mean, obviously you wanted to go there, that was the only school you applied to.
Um, so again, it turned out to be really like this is sort of part of it was a lucky experience, right? So I in the fall, I still thought I was going to play soccer. Um,
At Penn.
at Penn.
Wow.
And that's almost I was probably a little bit delusional at that point. So I had been I had been recruited to play soccer at Penn in my sophomore year of high school and in my junior year of high school. And it just so happened that the coaching staff at Penn in the soccer program turned over 3 times in my years. And
Wow.
they were it was there was a coach who'd been there for a while, first set of coaches that I got to know, been there a while, and then moved on to a bigger and better stage. And then another coach came in and was quickly scooped up to a big time program. So it wasn't, nothing, no scandal, nothing bad, but just coaches that came through and got offers, for their dream jobs.
Hmm.
Um, and so then the set of coaches that came in going into my senior year was sort of like, we really want to clean the slate and have our sort of our own recruits, like start over with our own recruiting. Um, but we'll keep you, like you can kind of like essentially, I can't even, it's been so long, I can't even remember exactly how it played out, but I think I had the sense that I had a shot at walking on, like I wasn't going to be like a big time recruit. I wasn't going to get a spot. I didn't even know what a spot was at that point, but I could still have a chance to be part of it. So I still was, that's still what I thought I was doing,
Mhm.
through November, through the applications. I came home from a soccer tournament and got my letter, right? So, um, and then over the spring, in the spring of my senior year, and running was going well. I had high school coaches who, it's funny looking back because I think, like I said before, I think for people who were watching from outside of my own brain,
Mhm.
what was going on and who I was, what I was doing, that they could see before I could that this was a
Mhm.
good direction to take. Right. So I had one high school coach who would like we would fight. I would say I can't come to that meet. I have a soccer tournament, and he would push, and I usually went to the soccer tournament, but to have somebody who could see
Mhm.
the value in it and would push back on like, no, you can really do this thing.
Yeah.
You should give it a try. And then I had another high school coach who entered me in a postseason meet without telling me I had to sell my U2 tickets. I sold the first big concert I was going to go to with my friends. I sold my U2 tickets, and I went to Eastern States to run a 1500 with only my coach. Um, and
Wow.
these if you when I look back at the string of choices I made in that year especially, it's not hard to see, right? Like where the heartstrings were really tugged. But coming out of that spring season, I think partly what it was is that it was going decently. I still wasn't really running at a level like times wise that would have made me a recruited runner. Um, but I felt like there was a lot more. Like I could tell
Hmm.
that I wasn't done. Um, and I was probably a little undersized and underpowered to be a star soccer player anywhere on the collegiate level. Um, and it was just I played a lot of years and I did enjoy it, but I felt like I had kind of reached my top end.
Hmm.
Um, and so I reached out to the coaches at Penn and asked if I could walk on. And it just so happened to be the very end of Betty Costanza's coaching career. And they had like a little less oomph in the recruiting class. And so there were spots. The roster was not oversized at all. And they said, sure, walk on.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, okay, so much to unpack here. First of all, have you made up for it? Have you gone to a U2 concert since you sold your tickets?
No.
You never go. Oh my, I have a similar story. A very, very good friend of mine bought tickets for me for George Jones. And I just, he's a George Strait. Sorry, George Strait. Fantastic artist. Would have been awesome to see. And I didn't, I think I sold them or didn't go. I think for a recruiting, it was back when I was coaching, and I'm like, man, that'd have been a cool concert to go to, and I never made up for it. So I was when you said sold U2 tickets, I'm like, well, tell me you made up for it at some point, and you're like, no, no. Okay. Second thing to follow up there, uh, why Penn? Obviously, very smart, good grades, things like that. Because you got into Penn, one of the hardest schools in the world to get into. Why Penn? 1,000 feet away versus any other school, whether it was Ivy League or Stanford or Northwestern and whatnot. What was it about staying home? I guess to go to school.
Yeah, so it was a little bit in spite of stay home. So I didn't need to be at home. I didn't care if like it was there was nothing
Okay.
pulling me that
Yeah, yeah.
it really was Penn.
Huh.
I had some friends from high school who were older than I was. I had one good friend from the track team who was at Penn. She didn't run there, but I got to sort of hang out some and what it came down to, I did a bunch of visits.
Okay.
And I never wanted to go far. I have a younger brother, a much younger brother, so he was going to be in middle school when I was in college. I didn't want to be, I didn't look anywhere across the country
Mm.
or nothing on an airplane.
Yeah.
Um, like that sort of travel wouldn't have been feasible. I'd have been
Yeah. Yeah.
gone,
Yeah.
not back and forth. Um, and so I think it came down to, I visited several places and I had fun recruiting trips and Penn was a great place. And it was sort of like if you had fun in 24 hours at somewhere, but there's still a lot of things you don't know about it, versus like you know this place, like
Mm.
you've seen this place, and you still like it, like that's a really good sign,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
so that was that. I think that was a lot of it was
Yeah.
like, and and it turned out to be really, like, I think that was part of why it worked out anyway, right?
Mm.
I made the decision as a very different person with a very different image of who I was
Right.
than even when I stepped foot on campus in the fall. And so to be able
Yeah.
to have said like, all right, I've seen enough of this place and I still like it, I think was probably in whatever the same underlying piece meant that even as I grew and changed, there was still a place there. And there were still people there that made sense.
That's an interesting twist when we, talk to and advise high schoolers today and we say, pick the school, not the coach, because the coach may not be there. Or if the sport goes away, you get injured or whatnot, would you still be happy there? That's an interesting twist on that exact same story with you. It's like, yeah, I thought I was this, I thought I was Claire, the soccer player, that did not turn out to be the way. And yet I still was very happy and content with the school that I chose and went into track and field. That's really interesting. Another thing that struck me was, and I know some sports are differently recruited than track. Track is, and I'll still push back on any coach that says otherwise. Track is still statistics first. There
Mhm.
are certainly other components to it, the kid themselves and their demeanor and leadership and character, absolutely. But at the end of the day, you're looking for a mark, and the 1600 in high school is the same as I can convert that to a 1500 in college. The track is the same. Maybe the boys shot put and discus and the hurdles we have to look at maybe a little differently as far as some characteristics because the weight goes up or whatnot. But if you're running two flat and a half mile in high school, you're gonna run at least two flat. You should run at least two flat in college. So, but with soccer, you mentioned. You're being recruited by one coaching staff at a young, and I know soccer does recruit young, kind of like volleyball, and gosh, even it seems like football keeps getting recruiting younger and younger. And there's a difference, right? Because I have to analyze you as a soccer player. It's not just, you scored X amount of points. Well, you might be playing against, you know, I hate to say nobody's, but you may be an average soccer player playing against below average, and so you look like a star. And in reality, it's like, oh yeah, when she gets here to the college level, she can't score to save her life. So there's a lot more analysis in that sense, not just statistics. So you get recruited as a sophomore by this one staff. They go on to a different opportunity. The next staff comes in. I hate to say that you have to prove yourself again, but things have to align. The coaching staff has to show interest that they want to analyze you again, and they have to see similar things that the past staff left, and then they leave to go to a different opportunity. And this new staff comes in the last year, and they've got to do the same thing. They've got to line up and say, I will analyze her, and I see the same things that maybe other people. So it's just interesting as a high school. I mean, you're 14, 15, 16 years old going through this. Uh, did you have was there ever any, I'll say animosity of like, man,
Mhm.
what in the world? Like I have to continually prove myself. The last staff thought I was good, and then the last staff thought I was good. What in the world? Like, was there any, like, as you're going kind of through that process, or did you even have like a inkling of that process, or is it, I mean, you're a young kid at that point. You can be forgiven that you didn't even really have a conscious thought about that.
Yeah, I definitely wasn't deep into it
Hmm.
that way. And I don't know. I don't know if it was my experience or if the experience generally was different. I
Hmm.
mean, it's like, late 90s, 2000.
Hmm. Hmm.
And so the whole um the intensity around college and college recruiting, I think was a little bit different, at least in
Yeah.
my corner of the world.
Yeah.
Um and it was so and it didn't take a lot of my own effort or changing, or so it really was like I played on a club team. I guested on some other club teams. Um, I went to camps. Coaches were at camps. That was the first place that I, it started was at a
Hmm.
camp. And then we did showcases, so there were some like senior, I think it was just seniors, but either juniors or seniors, and you just go and, like you're shuffled up on teams and just play a showcase. And so it was like baked in. It wasn't, like it didn't feel like my own special thing. Like I didn't have to, we weren't sending videos. Like we weren't
Right.
sending, like
Right.
highlight tapes or anything. It really was like, okay, these are the tournaments I play. This is the showcase. It's right here.
Yeah.
It's fun. It was more um like I actually think I remember feeling more frustrated and annoyed trying out for like the ODP team in high school. Like, and who knows why. I feel like
Mm-hmm.
but it just was, it seemed, I think, a lot more um like a shared experience, like we were all doing these things together, and I didn't feel, yeah,
Yeah.
so there's one of that. And actually, it's funny because I think one of the first people who realized and then got to see play out how good of a choice it was was the soccer coach at Penn, who he was at Penn from my senior year in high school until the first time I came back and was coaching at Penn. And
Oh,
so he got to see me choose running. He got to see me have some success there. He got to see it sort of become what I did with my life. And so like it was actually kind of
right.
cool to like stay even just a little bit connected and have him and I both sort of have this understanding, like
Yeah.
that worked out well. That
That
was
is
the right
cool.
thing.
That's
Yeah.
cool. I love that. And so what were you as you go into Penn, from summer through starting the freshman year, what were you thinking about, like I'm going to become a doctor, a business owner, but what were you thinking? I assume it wasn't coach and DO, but I could be wrong.
Politics.
Is that right?
Yeah. I thought I never really thought of myself as like a politician, but political advising, like that sphere. Yep.
Oh, wow. Is that right?
Yeah, so I was an IR major, and a lot of poli sci. Yep.
Yeah. Thank God you dodged that. I mean, when you look now, it's like, oh.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
and you said IR major. Let's make sure we're speaking the same language. International relations.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Good. Perfect. Okay. So you get to Penn. Did you play soccer your fall semester, or did you? So how did you get into actually full-time track? Let's say.
Oh, no, so I didn't play soccer at all. No, I
Yeah.
went in. So when I reached out to the Penn coaches in the spring of my senior year in high school, they basically just said, "Okay, here's the summer training. We'll see you in August."
The soccer coaches.
No, the track coaches.
So you just when soccer kind
I was
of
like,
I'm gonna call
cold
it
call.
fizzled out, it
Yep,
was just done. I'm moving straight
yep,
to track then.
yeah.
Wow. Okay. So you ran cross country for the first time then. How was that? That seems a little, I mean, there's some similarities obviously, but it's different. It's a different sport.
It's different, but I think again, like I think it was without knowing it, I just stumbled into like the thing that made the most sense to me anyway. So uh there was a lot of there was a lot of background fitness put in from soccer. It was fun. I,
Right.
I
Sure.
do laugh at it because they sent the summer training and I treated it like a soccer training packet, which was like, all right, if these are all the things I'm supposed to do in a day, then like it's okay if I do some in the morning and some later. And so I was working at a soccer camp that summer uh, at Haverford College. So at Haverford College has a nice little nature trail. It's like I don't know how long it is, a mile-ish. And so I would go out early in the morning and I would run as much as I could on the trail before I had to like arrive for drop off. And then I would run the rest of it afterwards at the end of the day. Like didn't occur to me that
So,
splitting my mileage would matter.
so they were like on Monday, 6 mile run. You're like, all right, well, I
Right.
got three done in the morning. I'll finish
Exactly.
out three, not six. That's awesome.
I had no idea. And,
Yeah.
I didn't feel bad about it. I wasn't like, oh shoot, it was just this is sort of how I mean it really like the pieces that lined up to make my transition to running in college like feasible and successful and healthy are hilarious looking back. I mean, it really was like the stars aligning. So,
Yeah.
if I had jumped into it and tried to do all of the mileage that somebody who'd been running for years was doing,
Right.
maybe it would have been fine, or maybe it would have been an absolute disaster.
Right.
Um, and so just out of sheer luck, it created this sort of like stepping stone
Right.
progression that worked out great.
They're like, Claire, did you do your workout? Yep, absolutely. Got
Yeah.
the 6 miles in. That's awesome. So talk to us about your Penn career. Did you run at Penn Relays as a high schooler?
Yeah, yeah,
Uh,
4x4,
yeah,
four by
perfect.
one,
Okay.
small
Uh,
team
yeah,
problems.
yeah, 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 right. Exactly. The distance runners on the 4x1. Exactly. So talk to us about your career at Penn and you went in thinking politics and international relations and poli sci, things like that. But when you got spit out as a senior, that doesn't seem like that was the course, maybe. So talk to us about your time at Penn as an athlete and as a student.
Yeah, so I came in, I absolutely fell in love with cross country and I think it helped that the team was lovely. The girls were great and I wasn't the only walk on. So it wasn't like it really was just this like perfect progression.
Mhm.
And so like I had a great time in the
Wh-
fall of my freshman year.
When you say walk on, help me understand something because we're talking about Ivy Leagues. There's no athletic scholarships. So, but is there like a distinction between like, oh, I recruited you to be on the team. Like if I had athletic scholarships, I would have given you versus walk on like, hey, we're lovely to have you. I hope you make it and maybe you'll be okay one day. Is that kind of when you're saying I got to
Yeah.
walk on? That's what I'm trying to understand that distinction.
And honestly, I think that the gap is probably bigger now than it was even then. It was really just, like there were a couple of us who never knew like didn't go through a recruiting process, just
Hmm.
didn't
Hmm.
know, didn't know what was going on and
Right.
but showed up and wanted to be part of the team. And then there were others who clearly, had been
Right.
recruited, knew that they were
Got
had
it.
a
Okay.
spot on the team when they got there. And
Okay. That makes sense. Okay.
uh
Sorry. Keep going,
yeah.
please.
Yeah, so had some good success my freshman fall. Like again, if I had come on tried to walk onto the team 10 years later, I would have been cut on week two, right? Like things, but it's hard to compare, right? It's
Sure.
hard to compare. So much has changed in so many ways around the sport, but um uh I thought, like maybe if I'm lucky, I'll run varsity, sometime this fall, and I ended up being in the top five all year. So it was a small team. It was a small
Yeah,
team this
still
year.
though, that's
But
you
yeah,
can
but
you can only
yeah,
compare to what's in front of you, not the global aspect of it, or what if it in this picture of time, what 20 years would look like after. You only have what you had right there, and you made top five. That's huge. That's
yeah.
absolutely huge.
Yeah, so it was fun and I was getting, good feedback and having success. So freshman fall was great. Freshman then through the rest of freshman year was I was really just in this like happy-go-lucky, like I'm learning what this is. Like when I remember that year we get to track workouts and coach would say like this is what you're gonna do and this is the pace you're gonna run and like there were girls who would just be like okay and they could go and just run that pace. And at that point,
No clue.
have bent my brain. I was like, wait, how do you know that that's what you're running? I just didn't
Mhm.
have the experience with doing that to like even conceptualize how it was
Right.
possible. It was like this magical talent.
Mhm.
um, yeah, so I was like, I think I was just in this kind of like blissful, learning the sport, having fun, no, very little pressure, not a lot of expectation. Uh,
It's interesting. I felt like this was kind of a duck to water type of description, like, hey, I've been running with my babysitter, like I found who I am as a runner, even though soccer tried to take me away, those kind of things. But then you share that story, which makes complete sense, and it's like, oh wait, you actually were still the stranger slash outsider to the sport. Like you didn't know about pacing and how what that even maybe you knew what it meant, but how to feel that, how to actually execute that part of very important part of distance runner running specifically. So it's real interesting, this kind of both sides of like, oh yeah, I'm a runner, but I have no clue how to run.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, there were some great upperclassmen on the team at that
Sure.
point who just, knew what they were doing, but also really enjoyed it. Like it was, I think I also like it wasn't until later in my career that there were people who would come onto the team. Gosh, I know one girl who stepped away from it, and it was the right thing to do, who said, like, gosh, this is the worst part of my day, practice. And I was like, I almost fell over. I was like, does not compute. What are you doing here then? How is this not the best part of your day? We're in the trails, we're running. This is
Right,
it's,
right.
um yeah, and so I think that for and everyone wasn't in exactly the same place, but by and large the upperclassmen there were having a lot of fun, and were like just great at like taking us under their wings and pulling us along and making us part of the thing, whatever it was, and showing us the ropes. So we definitely lucked out.
So you had experience in high school juggling academics and athletics. That's another thing again that just fascinates me with Ivy League athletes. And you've been alluding to how different it is today. Oh, I mean, I don't know, maybe whatever it was, 10, 20, 30, 40 years ago, we'd say, oh, Ivy League, that's where the smart kids go, but they're not as athletic as, say, the SEC and Big Ten or whatever. And bro, you just look at the results today, and it's it's like, man, there's some really smart, really talented kids. It's unbelievable. But you obviously had some experience with juggling those two, athleticism and academics in high school, because you made it to Penn. I mean, I don't think you make it to Penn without already having some skill set there. How did you? Was there much of an adjustment to the academic life as well as an increased athletic life as well?
Um, Yes and no. I mean, I think that probably one of the biggest things, for anyone who's really paying attention, you can see the next steps in life. But one of the biggest skill sets that I had was organization and time management. And
Mm.
so like and thriving thriving in thriving in a busy environment. So like when what I have is like, this is the time I have and it's all blocked out, it's the run is blocked in, but also studying, and so like being able to sort of think enough steps ahead that like I could plan a semester, I could see where things were going to land. I could like I as a child spent my allowance money at Staples, right? Like I liked I liked I've always enjoyed color coding.
I was just about to say, so you liked
Enjoy-
highlighters?
like
Yeah.
I like stationery, right? So and along like my mother used to say that she used to call me her cruise ship director. Like so, I think that there was something, these things aligned in way. They didn't know that a director of ops in college athletics was a thing, but if you go back, you can see the pieces there.
See,
Yeah.
instead of calling my kid, my cruise ship captain, I'm gonna be looking at my kid and be like, "You are my DO of Penn Relay." Like that's the yeah, yeah. Okay, let's talk a little bit about the actual athleticism part of it, and then we'll move on past graduation, because it's important to me, because you ran the event that I think should be the cap of distance running on a track. I love you guys, you 5K and 10K people. That's awesome. But the steeple, come on. What a great event, first of all. And what a great distance. 3,000. That's about as much as I can handle. Tell me about the steeple. I really
Yeah.
do love the steeplechase.
So again, it was an absolute luck of timing. I mean, maybe I would have found it anyway, but my freshman year was the first year it was an NCAA event for women. So no one did it. It was brand new.
Right.
And so it was kind of like open call for steeplers. Yes, I think like my background in other sports, in some multi-directional movement
Sure.
and balance, was seen as an asset, and I had hurdled some in high school, and so it was kind of like, of all these little distance runners out here, you got a couple of other things that may
Yeah.
bend towards this, and I not shockingly, I just loved it.
So this is 03, 04, 02.
This is the spring of 2002.
Yeah. So
Yep.
that was an extremely interesting time period for the steeple. I had just finished at JUCO, so 2001, and one of our fellow junior college coaches had been at the trials in 2000 and was like, someone's going to die. Like this is not good right now, the way it's set up in the athletics, and they'll get there, but holy cow, it's bad. And then I remember, so I was at Mississippi State in 04 and 05, and we had a pretty good steeplechaser, a couple of pretty good steeplechasers there. And I remember being at the SEC meet and just like, oh, this is the time. And I'm an SEC homer, so I think the SEC is the best in every event and every sport and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I'm at the SEC and I'm like, oh, these are the best of the best, and I'm watching the steeple. I'm like, oh my God, this is bad. Like, I mean, someone's going to die. Like literally I saw a girl land on another girl's back in the water. I mean, it's bad. It's an interesting time period for the steeple because it's not like today. Today, I mean, holy cow, it's like running their 3,000 flat, for crying out loud. They're so athletic, so good at steeple. How did you, I mean, you have to be tough to run the steeple even today in that kind of thoroughbred. They're just running so fast today. But you had to be like almost like a UFC fighter with it because of I mean, you
Yeah.
mentioned multi-directional, which is actually very interesting because there was a lot of more side to side than the, straightness that you'd like for a runner. How did you like, you must have like kind of embraced a little bit of that, like skin to skin, elbow elbow kind of racing, not just go out and do pretty little 5 minute miles or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's right up my alley, right? Like I in high school I ran the 4x4 at Penn Relays and somebody from, the other side of the stadium in the stand said, I saw you throw an elbow on the starting line, right? Like that's who I was.
Okay.
And and so without knowing all of the elements when I started, I think it just played right into my wheelhouse. And so and again that like even just the not having this like pedigree or big background in
Mhm.
like the distance running, like the rhythm running, it's like
Right.
it I came from a place where it wasn't always like, you're going to get bumped, your rhythm's going to be off and you have to find it again. And so it
Right.
wasn't just about locking in and staying locked in. I
Yeah.
mean, that's something I've learned a lot more later in running. It's certainly useful and comfortable.
Can you do that with a steeple though? Like I'm thinking like a 10K, like okay, I can go out and just 6 miles in a row, just hit 430s, or like I don't have to worry about kicking because I'm just going to run 430s and I'm going to beat everybody because somebody's going to do a 440 or something like that.
Yeah.
Can you do that kind of? I'm sorry, I know I told you we're not doing X's and O's, but I'm just curious. Can you do that in the steeple? Can you just lock in and just 2 minute and I don't know the times well enough to say what I'm about to say, but whatever certain time for every half mile, like every two
Yep.
laps, I'm just going to click, 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 click. Can you do that, or do you have to be more surgy and come back from behind? Is there more movement in the steeple?
Yeah. I mean, Um, it's not exactly the same, but there's definitely, you don't, it's not like you're running around just feeling off rhythm the whole time, you're
Okay.
not yet. So that but there are different, right? You do essentially like you're going to accelerate and the regular barriers can become much more rhythmic. Like the more that you practice, the more that you, mostly, and then there's going to be laps where you have traffic, it's just so there is a little bit
Yeah,
more
yeah, yeah,
no, but like you have to be ready for that in any event, right? Like
yeah.
yes, you can lock in and run a pace, but you need to be ready to cover a move. Like you might make a move and when that's coming, but much more often someone else makes a move and like you
Hmm.
got to decide to go with it anyway. So there's the same kind of thing plays. The biggest difference I think is like, in 5K you can run so hard that you're going to black out at the end. Like you're going to be in a little trouble if you're that tanked at the end of a steeple and you're still trying to go over things. Um, so there's just sort of like a different like in a really funny way. I think it's sort of the same brain space of like really being able to sort of like think big picture and like see the whole thing of like I need to plan ahead. Like I need to know. I think I need to choose to be here. I can stay in the race, but I also know that like that there's this other thing coming. Like I know it's
Mm.
happening in the future. I know I need to be at this certain place later on and kind of like rationing out
Yeah, yeah,
yourself
yeah,
in a
yeah.
different way. That aligns with a lot of other things in life. Um,
Yeah, yeah. It's kind of an oddball race, and maybe that's why I'm even more attracted to it. Because, I'm thinking even like typically when we're training on the track, we're doing quarter repeats or half mile, like we're doing 1 lap or 2 lap or 3 lap. We're doing a very set thing. But in a steeple, a lap is not 400 meters. So even that is like kind of blown out a little bit as far as when you talk about splits. It's not really a quarter split what you're doing, and you have barriers in the way. And you're right, you can't even if you think of the last water barrier jump, you still have something that last barrier. That's the trickiest barrier, right? The one
right.
after right after the water barrier. And so you still, even though you're kicking, you only got 150, 170 meters left. There's still something deadly, basically, if I don't navigate it correctly. There's still something in my way. It's just an oddball race. And I think maybe that's another reason why I'm attracted to it. It's just different. I love that. That's really cool.
Yeah.
I
And I
love
will
that.
say you're gonna like this story. So I got to race I think it was my senior year of Penn Relays. I raced the steeple. And there was one water jump. Now this girl, she did end up beating me. I don't remember her. She was from North Carolina. I don't remember her name. Um, but she was really getting on my nerves because she was right in front of me and she'd jump in the water and she'd land on 2 feet and she'd just stand there. And so I think the highlight for me and for many of the fans at the water pit was I had enough of it and I landed right behind her and I just grabbed her by the hips and I just moved her out of my way. So
No other race at all. I love
right.
it. I love it. I love it. And just for timeliness, I love that you were an elbow thrower at the start. I did that in one race and I actually got jacked right back, which was not good. But not a baton hitter of other people.
Oh gosh, yeah, I
Yeah, yeah,
saw
yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah,
no,
yeah,
no,
yeah.
no.
Not good. Not good for our sport, to be real frank with you. Okay, did you graduate with an IR, International Art Relations?
I graduated with poli sci.
Okay,
Uh, but it was sort of like they're very interwoven. So I took
sure,
a lot
sure.
of IR. IR is actually just a collection of so poli sci, philosophy, econ,
Got it.
history.
Got it.
Yeah.
So you graduate is the idea I'm going to go get a job in that field, or what's next? We graduated from
Oh,
UPenn,
yeah,
one of the
yeah,
greatest
yeah.
universities in the world. What do you do next?
So so I wandered a little. I uh I had applied in my senior year. I had applied to some fellowships and some schools, mostly abroad. And I got into a couple of schools, but I didn't get a funding fellowship. So um I was not in a position at that point to say like, well, let's just do it anyway. So I graduated, and I actually spent the summer essentially just hanging out, like walking a lot, reading a lot.
Yeah, yeah, sure.
Um, and I don't remember when, if it was end of the spring, sometime in the summer, but my high school athletic director called and asked if I'd come coach cross country.
Yeah.
So, um, I went back to my high school and I coached cross country and I did a bunch of subbing, like I got on the sub list and
Hmm.
just so that year I coached there and did a lot of subbing and enough that I could make ends meet and start falling in love with the coaching thing.
Yeah, okay, that's always my next question, especially for those who are doing it out of not even necessity, but like, oh, convenience, I guess maybe is the
Right.
way to word it. Like,
Yeah.
oh yeah, I'm sure I'll coach. Coaching is different than running, than being the actual athlete. Now you're actually taking things out of you to the other people, and you're kind of responsible for it. You can mess them up, right? 10-mile runs every day. That's gonna drive people out of the sport and drive them right into the athletic trainer's room, right? And things like that. What did you think about like that first semester of coaching? What was it? I mean, was there like a bug of like, oh, wait a minute, I really like this, or was it just another, okay, at least I get a stipend or something. I get to pay a bill.
I mean, I always loved it. I always loved it, and I had a lot of fun. And I think it was more that I just hadn't seen it yet as something I could do forever, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
or I didn't yet see it that way. That
Mm-hmm.
it was never not fun. I didn't there was never a point that I didn't love what I was doing. I just thought that it was limited. I'll do this for a
Mm-hmm.
little while until I figure out what I'm going to do. And it wasn't probably until my second or third year coaching And I was actually at a different school at this point, but that it sort of clicked that like
Mm-hmm.
this could be something that actually went somewhere. Like I, I was 3 years in, and I was like, had moved out. Like I was living on my own. I could make like this was working. In a way that and that wasn't really like that was sort of the like okay this could be feasible, like you could keep doing this, and it was really more just like just the people I was surrounded by, like the other coaches where I was coaching, uh, but also just this larger community of coaches. So one thing that I had linked into in college was a cross country camp. So my coach from my freshman year at Penn was part of the group that started Running Works cross country camp, and so I like had this other network of coaches, and this was I mean all these people who did that all the time, all
Mm-hmm.
year, every year. And so it like I could see that it was real, like it was a thing that people did.
Mm-hmm.
But being surrounded by people who and this was like the big tension, graduating from a school like Penn, where people go and do big things. Um, and and then like but also people go and don't do these like big visible huge things.
Mm-hmm.
And um being surrounded by people in the running community and the coaching community who um, were like just thought it was awesome to be doing it to and were supportive of the running I was doing and the coaching I was doing and like just who I was, and we're never asking, well, but what are you going to do next? Like there
Mm-hmm.
was there was just this um, acceptance and encouragement and acknowledgement that like this was a thing and this was enough.
Yeah, very common. I used you're kind of actually helping me kind of reframe a little bit something how I talk about coaching as a career. I always say that it's typically not like a light switch where like, oh yeah, my sophomore year of college, boop, I knew I wanted to be a track coach or anything like that. It's very rarely that it sometimes we certainly, 300 plus interviews here on the Gill Connections podcast. There's certainly some examples that way. It's typically the way I would describe it, the fader button for your light. It's like, oh, I like this sport. Oh, yeah, I like my coaches and what they do, and yeah, maybe I can be a coach. But you're actually kind of maybe inventing something that I don't think is out there is a slider button up until a certain point, and then it turns from off to on. So it's like, oh yeah, this coach, yeah, I'm enjoying coaching. I'm around other people, and then this snap of like, oh, this is what I'm going to be a coach. It's kind of interesting this combo of like, it's so interesting how people to be a coach, you typically have had a coach. Very rarely do we see that coach and go, man, that's what I want to do. It's like, I don't even think of that as a profession. And then one day I look back like, oh yeah, wait a minute. That person makes a living doing that. Maybe I could do that. So it's interesting. You're, tiptoeing into this coaching thing, and then you start seeing a sense of community, other coaches. That is very common. We start seeing a sense of community. And then it's like, oh, wait a minute. I'm a coach. So did you start pursuing it as more full-time at that point or?
Um, yeah, what again, it wasn't like that wasn't really even the switch of it. It
Right.
was I so but I did sort of once I had started thinking of it as like future, this is
Hmm.
will continue. So I was coaching at another high school, and actually with my now husband. And the sort of again the sometimes timing happens, and sometimes one sort of a path changes, and then we make the timing work. So the I was thinking about going back to school in for nutrition, and the head coach at St. Joe's, I guess, had an assistant who like it wasn't in. I think they maybe had gone a year without an assistant, or someone had just left. So anyway, there was an assistant coaching job opening at St. Joe's, which is where my husband ran. So it was him and another alumni, like the little alumni network, sort of put the bug in my ear, and then and so I got a job coaching there, which was very part-time, but it allowed me to sort of shift gears um, enough that I could coach there and start taking some classes. And I never finished another thing. I started some classes there, and in later years at St. Joe's, I took some more some full-time classes out at Westchester, and then I had my first child and never looked back. So
Yeah, that changes everything. Yeah, absolutely. Husband ran for St. Joe. Was he a distance runner as well? Oh man, does he get lost on 9 milers as well? Is he?
well, he's the one thinking about doing a 50 miler. So
Oh, that's right. Oh yeah. So he's a little. I hope you're not listening. There's something up here, sir. Come on, 50 milers. People who run marathons are a little, for a guy like me, it's a little kind of crazy. Those ultra guys, come on, that's nuts. Is he? You think he's the kind of guy? Is he gonna like think about doing maybe not the Barkley itself, but like those kind of? Right? Is he ever gonna graduate to that?
I mean, so yeah, like he'd rather not run like a road marathon, but he'll go get lost for 25 miles in the trails. Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
that's
So I think yes.
nightmare stuff right there, dude. Holy. If you haven't, have you watched that documentary, the Barkley?
Yeah, yes.
Okay. So if you're listening, if you haven't, even if you're not a distance, I'm not a distance runner by any stretch of the imagination. But I actually learned about the Barkley through a podcast I listened to called Stuff You Should Know. And they mentioned this documentary. And so I went on YouTube and watched this. I mean, it's fascinating. I mean, the character, it's character development is what it is. The characters that are running this race, the characters that are racing in this thing, it's a culture of its own. And it was really fascinating, crazy, but absolutely fascinating what they did. So I highly suggest. I don't know if it's any on streaming service, but I know for sure it's on YouTube. I think it's like an hour and 10 or something like that to watch. But it's a really neat marathon in Tennessee that they do on an annual basis. Kind of secret hush hush, like there's no website and things like that. It's cool. I'd highly recommend it, and I'd highly recommend he does not run that. It's just crazy, man. That's just nuts. Absolutely nuts. Okay, so you're coaching at St. Joseph. So how do we, in the sake of time here, how do we
Mhm.
get back to Penn? How do we do that?
So I coach at St. Joe's for the better part of 6 years.
Wow.
When Steve Dolan came in at Penn, I think it took a couple of years, but I think it was always sort of in his plan, or early on, it became part of the plan to try and get this was sort of the birth of director of ops in NCAA cross country and track.
Hmm.
And so in the 2014, so it was the fall of 2014. I they created a full-time position that was coaching and ops with cross country and track. And
Oh,
yeah, and
so you came in coaching first because you don't
yeah,
coach now, right? I
yep.
mean, I don't know how you could do both, to be honest with you. But when you first started, it was the way they justified it was like, hey, we can make this happen, but she's going to have to do some coaching as well. It's going to have to be one of those slots to do that.
Well, it was also, I think, at the start of this sort of the director of ops world, it was a lot of coaches, a lot of people who wanted to be coaches,
Right.
and it was how they could get a full time, or how they
Right.
could get a foot in the door, or learn the ropes around it.
Right.
And there is, I mean, anyone who's spent a life in track and field knows that like it is in a lot of ways very different from other sports, and so when you're going to do the ops and logistics for cross country and track, understanding the sport is a really big asset, right?
Hmm.
So, um, so it's helpful to have that connection, to have both of those things. But yeah, so I came in. I was Steve's assistant with the distance, men and women, in 20 from the fall of 2014. End of cross country to through the spring of 2016.
And that when you say the DO side of it, was that for the team? Because there's an important distinction here. There is the Penn Relays, the meet, and then there is the U-Penn cross country track and field team. Were you DOing for the team or for the relays or both?
Just the team. So
Okay.
at that point, the relays office was still completely separate.
Yeah. Yeah.
Although
Okay. That's right.
I
That's
did
right.
work at the relays office in college. That was one of my work study jobs.
Oh man, that's it's such a connection there. I love it. That's right. Because who was the director of Penn?
Dave was the director, Johnson. Yep.
Johnson, legendary. Yeah, thank you. And that's right. And that's kind of recent-ish when he
Mhm.
retired, maybe 4 years ago. Time slips by.
Yeah, honestly, I think it was when I came back the second time. So when I came back to Penn in 2019.
So did you, so hold on before you came back. So you left in 2016?
Yep.
Okay. What did we do 3 years?
So I coached with my husband. We coached together at Earlham College, which is a
Yeah.
small, yeah, D3 Quaker school in Indiana.
I know exactly. I coached in Muncie. I coached at Ball State.
Okay,
So I
yeah.
know Earlham very well. In fact, when I was there, oh my God, no way. No, no. I was gonna say, no way, this is you. When I was at Ball State, so '02 and '03, I don't know how I remember these stupid things. They signed, we made our bread. Sue Parks was my head coach there. I was on the women's side. She made her bread and butter on 11 flat to 11:10 2 milers. Like that was just, man, she could take an 11 flat, 11:10 2 miler and make them an all-American cross country runner, a good steep. I mean, that was just her money. And Earlham signed this girl, a local girl, kind of in that area. That was an 11:05. Like we thought we were going to get her, and she goes to
Oh,
Earlham. We're
wow.
like, we're
Yeah.
like, what in the world? And she did a really good job. So yeah, so I don't know why I know Earlham. That is the reason I ever remember
You?
that is that. Yeah. So you went to Earlham. Yeah, okay. Well, that's so I was really worried you were going to live your entire life in Philly. So you got outside of
Yeah.
the greater Philly
Pick a
area.
winner.
Yeah, how so you're there for 3 years.
We're there for 3 years.
And
Yep.
then that just gravitational pull of Philly just it's kind of like California. Everybody from California wants to get back to California. It just sucked you back in and you had to get back to Philly.
Coming back was always the plan.
Ah,
So all of our family is here,
right.
Philly, South Jersey. So we and sometimes that's the plan and it never happens. But even when we left, it was the plan. And and we it was an absolutely worthy adventure. We had a great time. We like it was part of why we went was like for Rob he said like we both knew life would be incomplete. There would always be questions if coaching in the NCAA was never experienced, and it didn't take him very long to decide that while this was really important and he knew he needed to do it, he preferred coaching high school. um, so there were a lot of reasons, but the biggest reasons were actually some administrative changes
Right.
there that accelerated our timeline
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
back this way. It went from a place where when we were hired in we sat with the president of the college when we were out there visiting in the spring of 2016, and our daughter, who was 4 at the time, just turned 4, was climbing on the couches and put her headband on and put a headband on me, and then he just didn't miss a beat. Like this was all right. This is and in the name of authenticity, he knew exactly what he was getting, and we felt comfortable. And so it was we had gotten to a point here with me coaching at St. Joe's and him coaching in high school. And like there were months where I was like, we were not both at home for 2 weeks straight, like the schedules were just crazy. And we said, all right, like we both really loved coaching. Like really respect each other as coaches. Like this would be a cool thing, like enough to be like, hey, like actually, like I bounce things off you all the time. I'd love like if I was gonna pick anyone to coach with, it'd be you. Like
Right.
let's and if we're both gonna keep coaching and we're gonna have a family and maybe we're gonna have a bigger family, we gotta do this in a way that we can do it together and
Yeah.
everyone in the ship, so to speak. So
I mean, being a spouse of a coach is hard. Both spouses being coaches are hard. I mean, it's just like you said, the schedules. I mean, it's amazing, and then having family on top of that, it's amazing. It is a tough profession, specifically, and I'm gonna say specifically coaching track and field, lump cross country, and that of course, but I don't know the experience of like a tennis coach and their families, or a golf coach, or even a football coach and things like that. But I know for track, a lot because the season is all year, and then you add recruiting into that, and so there's trips and time for that. It's a grueling profession for a person, and that just continues to get more grueling as you add a spouse and family to it. It's you got to be very intentional, is what I've learned as coaches. We have to be very intentional with our families and loved ones and friends if we're going to be good track coaches, meaning it doesn't consume us and that's all we are. out there. So it's really tough.
Yeah, I mean, and it really was something we could do together. Uh,
Hmm.
I mean, I think it made us better coaches. I think it made us better spouses. I mean, there was,
Yeah.
you can't, nothing can sit. You can't sit on anything. Everything you gotta face it. You gotta deal with it. You gotta tackle it. You
That's right.
gotta keep going. And at a place like Early, I mean, it's a small school, and a lot of international students, a lot of students who come from pretty far away, and so a very intentional community. People were choosing it and choosing to
Mm.
be part of it and like really like all in be part of it. Um, which was a very cool place to be working and living as a family, right? So
Mhm.
like our kids were just part of it. And
Right.
like this last week, a guy who we coached there stayed with us for an interview in Philly, right? Like there are still like the
Wow.
connections, working in an environment like that, where you're all in, this is just what we're doing, and people are really being intentional about it. And we were trying to build something,
Hmm.
so we
Hmm.
were like, uh, the connections that we were able to make there with students were invaluable. I mean,
That's
just
cool.
really, really real. Yeah.
I love that. That's really cool. So you're back in 19, straight back to Penn, and in what role, what capacity?
So back in 19, and they had I stayed in touch with Steve the whole time we were gone, and I think they had gotten to a point they were going to split the role, the ops and the coaching role that I had had, and actually they had just hired Matt Goslin, who's now the associate head coach for for women's cross country, head coach women's cross country. I don't know exactly how the words go together, but they're all in there. And so he had just come back in the coaching arm of it, to be the women's distance coach. Um, and they were going to have a part-time director of ops, like intern on steroids kind of position.
Mhm.
Um, so we came back for Rob got a job coaching back in the Friends League. Um, and so I said, we're coming back now. He's and he managed to talk them into making it a full-time operations role. So I came back
And for the track team.
just with the track and cross country in 2019. Yep.
Got it. So before you switch over to the Penn relay side, what is the role? It's an interesting concept there at UPenn that you have this track team, which that on its own, that's a huge endeavor, having a college cross country track and field team, and then you have this behemoth, historical track meet right there as well, the Penn Relays. What was your like when you were split like that? Like, did you talk to the Penn Relays like when you're doing your entry? I'm just trying to think of like things that normally we do to another university. If I'm going to the LSU meet, I turn in my relay or my entries, and I book my travel, but it has nothing to do with LSU. We just show up and then they provide the or the officials and things like that. Are you Is it completely split? Like, you don't have anything to do with any officials? You don't have anything like you're putting in entries just like Cal Berkeley is putting in entries. Like, is it a completely different? It just happens to have the same name pin on it.
Yeah. More or less. Yeah. I
Wow.
mean, like high level, like I think Dave and Steve would put their heads together and just to make sure, like if they were gonna have someone who just didn't make it or who just like there was like a little bit of conversation, but
Mhm.
no, essentially no.
Like very, very
Really separate.
hard to tell Penn versus when I was at Mississippi State, we went to Penn Relays. So it'd been very hard to tell Penn and Mississippi State apart outside of colors and mascots and stuff. Yeah. Oh, wow. That's interesting. Okay. Uh, did you have any? So you're not coaching at all at this
Nope.
point. Any, I'm gonna call it buyer's remorse. Any, when I came to Gill, I coached for 10 years and had a little uh, intermediate career, and then came to Gill. There was a little bit like, oh, like for me, I always say like when 2:30 rolled around every day, I'd be like, oh man, I'm supposed to be outside, but I've still got work to do, right? Well, any buyer's remorse? Any like, oh man, I really kind of wish I was still coaching. Anything like that as you're working through your DO role?
No.
Yeah.
I do love coaching. I think the aspect I love is getting to know an athlete or a person,
Hmm.
and like getting to know them, getting to know what makes them tick, being able to then like guide them or help them or push them or like, like they're gonna have goals. Like I like being in on that with them, that kind of
Hmm.
so I've found ways to do those things
Yeah.
with just really different X's and O's.
Yeah. Yep.
Um, I did do some coaching, like Rob and I coached a club in Philadelphia for a couple of years. And it was like, again, it was perfect timing. We were coaching during COVID and coming out of COVID. And so it was like it worked. The timing worked, life worked, our schedules weren't crazy. And
Mhm.
as things took off again, we stepped away from that. And but really, I think it was so in our last year at Earlham, I had done a lot of very intentional thinking and like sit down and like, okay, what is it? What are the parts of this that you want to keep? What are the parts of this job that you love? And what are the things that you could walk away from? And so it steered me towards administration
Yeah.
in terms of the just like the type of like the work that I was drawn to, the work that I was just good at, like the stuff that came easily, places where I felt like not only can I do this, I can figure out a way to do it better, right? Like that was sort of okay. So that was like a clear path. This is where I'm headed. Um, and what the like in some ways I think partly because like student athletes they come in for a short time and they go like that's always how it is. And so yes, creating those relationships and helping them chase their goals and figuring things out is part of it. Honestly, like I think for me being there at that time in their lives when they were figuring out life was more impactful than the workout they were running
Mm.
or the time they were chasing or like it just always was. And so realizing that there were going to be ways that I could connect with people and be in people's lives, whether it was professionally or not,
Yeah.
that was still accessible.
Yeah.
Um, and and we came back from Indiana with two kids. So it turns out that at 3:30 when you're supposed to be outside, I could be, or I could be picking up my kids, or so it was very much like when people asked for years when I gave up soccer, did you miss it? I
Right.
said, honestly, not for a minute. Because I was running instead. There was no big gaping hole. I wasn't bored. I wasn't twiddling my thumbs. And I was doing something I was loving. And so, when I give up something, but I fill the time and the space with other things I love, it's good, smooth sailing.
What an important aspect of, I want to say coaching, but it's really life and relationships. What I heard you say was when you boil down, hey, here are the things that I love doing. Like, let me do these 24 hours a day and I'm perfect. This is great. And I thought you were going to go more at first talking about like, oh, I love, booking travel and roster management, things like that. But you were like, oh, I love impacting these kids during this time when they're trying to find themselves. And so, the other side of my head goes, oh, well, that's what coaching is. And you're like, yeah, but that's beyond the X's and O's. That's beyond how many repeats we're doing today. That's little Susie and Claire, a mentor mentee, even if type of situation. So I think we forget about that sometimes as coaches. Because if you ask a coach, I bet if I surveyed a bunch of 100 coaches and said, "Hey, what would you do if you weren't coaching?" I think nearly 100% would say, "Oh, I can't imagine." Like, what do you mean not coaching, not being there on the track and helping them become better long jumpers and shot putters and people and things like that? I think we tend to forget that there's a separation there, that there's athleticism and then there's life because there's other people that are connecting and positively impacting these young kids as well, right? Teachers, tutors, their parents, friends, things like that. So that's a really interesting aspect of like, oh, I do want to affect 18 to 22-year-olds, but maybe not necessarily because of what reps or long runs we're prescribing out there. That's a really important fact to know there. That's really cool. I appreciate you sharing that. Uh, is the next transition to director of ops of Penn? No, of course not. You didn't leave again, did you? Is this your third time at Penn? Okay, what happens next?
Oh, with relays. Well, so again, So as Steve took over, like there was sort of this like merger kind of, right? And
Right,
it was,
right, right.
it's not like a total merger, but we're reshuffling, reshifting. So when Dave Johnson retired, Steve took over, and shortly thereafter, um, he asked if I would take on this piece with relays. And we were definitely on the phone. I was definitely at home. It was definitely during COVID. Um, yeah. So at first it was kind of like, oh, we don't even really know what this means or
Right.
looks like. Um, and and the truth is it's just changed and evolved every year anyhow.
Mhm.
So,
So, titles are. I love how you were talking about the titles, and it's in the word somewhere, and we have to come up with these titles because that's just I don't know that I don't know why we have to come up with titles. It's the way we do things, and I almost said corporate world, but just in general, we just have titles, right? Whether it's Mister or Mrs. or teacher or director of ops or head coach, whatever, right? So let's step back and let you just kind of word salad here a little bit. So what do you do? Screw the titles and all this stuff, and it's evolved. So when I think of Penn Relays and know that you work for Penn Relays, what are I know what the Penn Relays are. From the outside, I see this big track meet going on, this great carnival. What are you doing for the Penn Relays?
okay. So I do a lot of like we were saying earlier, I live in the future and I live in the past.
Mm.
So I do a lot of the like anything that's needs to be booked. I work with the college teams that are coming. Like I'll set up the hotel blocks and then
Wow.
match up the teams with hotels and our hotel contacts here. I do all of the staff blocking for in that way, like the staff that we do put up, like some of the officials, some of our
Mm.
like people who come in for a longer time or just different roles, people who come from far away. It's like I do all of that. So I mean, like logistically, it's
Hmm.
like crunching numbers and matching, like whether it's like there are some teams where it's gonna like in order to get them here, we really need to be able to say like, and we'll guarantee that you can stay right near campus, right?
Right,
So
right, right.
like so that kind of like figuring out like what do we need and then how much can we offer and then how do we make the right matchups and just connecting.
So let's stay right there because I know that's not all you do, but let's stay right there. That alone is a full-time job because like how many teams are you talking to in different
Um,
capacities, of course, but
right. So for this piece, it's probably like a dozen. It's not every. It's just collegiate and
right.
the teams that are coming from pretty far away.
Okay.
And and some of the teams that come from pretty far away have their own thing that they did whatever it is they've done it for 20
Right.
years and they just want to do their thing.
Right.
But there are only a couple of hotels that are right near campus.
Yeah.
And like it's funny actually. One of the things that they put in my job description every time along the way was like cultivating relationships across campus, right? Like, which means like I'm the one who has to go and have a good relationship with the finance office, with the hotel people. Like there's just like it seems silly, but in the little booking that I do all year, in the way that I interact with them when we're doing recruits and just sort of like keeping in touch and giving them a tour and taking their tour, like just little things that then when it comes down to it, and I'm like, also, I'm gonna need, like
Mm.
in an emergency,
Right.
do you have like the just having the right relationship with those people throughout the year and
Mhm.
over the years means that in my moment of need,
Mm.
I can call them and they'll say yes, or
So,
move mountains to make it happen.
so you're DO for the team and Penn Relays,
Correct.
if I heard you say, because you said recruiting and stuff. Oh, so this is one of those positions where it's like, hey, you're the DO of the track team. We want you to be the DO of Penn Relay. Both, by the way. We want to figure out now how do you do both jobs?
Yeah.
These are two jobs here with one person. Wow.
Well, I have been lucky in the last year and a half. It's not just one person. So the first shift that happened coming out of COVID was I really didn't travel very much with the team anymore. So when I came back the first time, I traveled all the time. And it was definitely, boots on the ground DO. And then we went for a little while where yeah, like I had young kids and I was like, I just can't,
Right.
like I've spent all this time home with them and they have a very different relationship with with work travel, like not even with me, just like with work travel. Yeah, when
Right.
they spent 2 years not seeing it, going back full time was like a just non-starter.
Yeah.
Um, and so we we had that conversation coming out of it. I said, like, I'm happy to keep doing this stuff, but I can't do all the travel. And so either that's okay or it's not okay. You can say, but that's what I got. And so um, we spent probably a year, and like travel didn't look quite the same even, right? So it's kind of like as we graduated back, there was a bunch that they just did without me, and I would, there were still a couple of trips, like a big rally relays or Heps weekend. I traveled for
Mhm.
a couple of years with that stuff. And then we got a great intern who came in her junior year and was working with Penn Relays, and came back in the fall of her senior year at Temple, and was very part-time, but took on, started learning a lot of the team travel pieces, the like week to week stuff. And this year has been essentially full-time traveling with the team and handling a ton of the team travel stuff.
Mhm.
So that has been a lifesaver. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, and I mean, it helps. So in some ways, she filled in holes that just no one was doing. It just wasn't, so for on the coaches side, started providing more support there, and in other ways has taken things off my plate in just that make this sustainable again.
So are you doing anything with scheduling, officials, marketing? I mean, there's just so much that goes on with any track meet, and then you add the spectacle that is Penn Relays.
So in terms of officials, so like some communication, but not a lot, right? So Gail Zachary, who's been she was in charge of me when I was a work study in college at Penn Relays. So she's still with us, and she still takes on the majority of officials, sort of like ahead of the meet, coordinating, communicating, setting everything up. And then Norm, who is a volunteer in the office, who was also there and has been around for decades. He's in charge of officials the during the meet. So he is a master of lists and organization, and the officials bins and the clipboards and the and so he does that. So officials, other than like communicate, like I'll book hotels and I'll make sure the food happens, and that's sort of my connection in with officials. Um, I don't do any marketing, which is really probably good. It's not my um for everyone involved, right? No, we have like the coolest thing about Penn Relay. So some people from the outside, people look in and they're like, "Holy cow! Like you do so much. It's huge. It's massive. Like how do you do that?" And the truth is, like for 2 months leading up to it, every 2 weeks, we sit in a room with 30 people, right, from Penn Athletics, because everyone's involved. And so we have people who are primarily in charge of like when we do when even when you talk ops for Penn Relays, like it's really just the Penn Relays ops. It's the coordinating the hotels. It's so for the biggest sort of elements for me are collegiate hotels, staff that um, stay with us, uh, and the professional field. So that the coordinating in terms of like transportation and logistics and
Mhm.
lodging for the pro fields,
Mhm.
and then just the paperwork pieces. So like getting them to commit, like the logistical, like send it out, get them to commit, and like all that stuff. Like this sort of executing, right? So hey, here's our professional field. It's going to be great. Excellent. Okay, now I'll send out the letter. We'll get them to sign it. We'll find out who's the right contact. We'll be in communication with their coach or their agent, whoever it is. So like the behind the scenes pieces
Yeah.
that get them to the starting line or their event, to show up. So those logistical pieces, but the bigger like athletics, like footprint logistical pieces,
Mhm.
the entire athletics ops and facilities team is behind it. And so like like, and they don't just show up and do like what like they know what
Hmm.
they're doing. They've done it for years. They have manuals. Each different group has a manual. Everyone has a protocol. And so to like that was actually one of the coolest things as I started to like just see like how many people are on board and how many people just like know how to do this stuff and there it wouldn't be as smooth without any one of them. Uh,
Hmm.
but yeah, it is much bigger than the titled staff.
Yeah.
Back to that. Yeah.
What what um what can you think of a story to share that from us from the outside, whether we're coaches or fans, that we show up and get our credentials and get our kids ready to race and all that kind of stuff. Like when we had Aaron on a couple years ago now, like he shared with us that I think that was the first year that, and you correct me where I'm wrong. I'm sure I'm misspeaking here. I guess the girls 4x4s had always run on Thursday and the boys on Friday. And we wanted to switch it up. It's like, well, the girls should run on Friday. And I may be mixing Friday and Saturday. Again, correct me where I'm wrong here. But essentially, it was we're going to take the girls 4x4s from one day and move them to the next day in place of the boys, and the boys are going to take the girls spot. And I remember saying something like, "Oh, well, that seems pretty easy. I assume that, they're probably the same amount of heats and there's some little jigger in here and there, but ultimately that's pretty easy." And he was like, "Oh no, Mike, what you don't realize is, the average girls 4x4 is, I'm making up numbers here, 5 minutes, and the average boys is 3:45. And so you have a time of, X that you have to now fit into little Y, and the reverse is true. And so you have to move like I think maybe the steeples had moved or something like it was just like something from the outside that coaches and fans would be like, "Oh, I didn't realize that that was actually kind of hard. Like you had to do a lot of work to make that happen." Anything you can think of from your side that's like, "Oh yeah, Mike, you don't realize that I have to book 20% of the hotel rooms in Philly." That'd be a ton, I guess, I assume. But anything like that that we just don't see that is happening behind the scenes.
Um, yeah, I mean, I think it's just like that. Like it's one of the funniest things to me. The biggest learning curve was like when it actually comes. Like when you ask me, like, what do you actually do like that weekend? Like, what are you in charge of?
Yeah, I was going to get to that too. Yeah, absolutely.
Like nothing and everything, right? So, but it's also everything, right? So it really is that like ideally by the time you get to that weekend there shouldn't like I should have a clear schedule
Mm,
because
makes sense. Makes sense.
it's the fire putting out that
Yeah,
needs to happen, right? And
that makes sense.
yeah, so okay. the the probably what last year or 2 years ago we switched, maybe it was so we switched the schedule to have when we brought in the professional, and like the scheduling changes have been big the last 2 3 years, right? And it was the whole girls day, so forever
Right.
and always the girls had only run on Thursday.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I mean, high school girls, college women, the whole thing had only run on Thursday, with people who made finals would run Friday. And forever and ever, the boys, even the high school boys, were split between Saturday and Sunday,
Mm,
because there's more events because the kids, and you get men
right.
between both days. And so it was just this really lopsided experience. And interestingly, over the last couple of years, as we've flipped back and forth, the high school boys who've gotten to run on Thursday and Friday, at least from the coaches' side, like there's something actually to that experience that they've enjoyed differently. So it's interesting to like pick up on that, but I think it was a necessary change. Um, and so the schedule changes have been a big deal. Well, one of the small things that we didn't think about at first is we then created a Friday night program. Okay, that's cool, right? It's not that much stuff, but you got some stuff on the track now, Friday evening. It's not
Mhm.
just includes some collegiate events, right? So Thursday evening changed a little bit, Friday evening changed a lot, and then You need all of the officiating crews that are involved in it to also have changed. You need all of the, like, there was a Friday night officials event. It was a big, they had their big dinner on Friday nights. Well, that can't be. So just like those pieces, like, okay, so you make this little schedule change, but also we need to figure out where the officials awards go. They move into Saturday. Well, how are we feeding them? The whole, it's like those little things, which the the first year that we tried it, the other thing is that it depends, or the way that we did it the first year, we flipped it. It depended on officials clicking buttons, like the right boxes when they responded, like, will you be at dinner Thursday? Will you be at dinner Friday? And so the very first year that we switched it, there was a list of officials who were supposed to be at dinner on Friday. Well, there were a lot of officials that potentially missed that, didn't understand how it was changing, didn't
Right.
realize they were going to be here all day. And so there was one point I got a call from someone high in athletics, and it was, you have got to get to the door of the dinner and stop this official from coming to blows with the security guard. It was, which is a funny thing to be sending me for, right? But I guess in some ways maybe not. So that was probably the biggest like um five alarm fire in this exact moment. This must be fixed. Get over there.
Holy.
Bad, yeah.
Especially something that you've done for years and probably decades. So, I mean, there is a little bit of like we get, I'm gonna say we get complacent, and that's usually, you say that in a bad connotation, but there is a little bit like, oh, I've been officiating and doing this because very impressive, by the way, when you guys do your uh, officials, I'm gonna call them awards or recognition on the field, and it's, this guy has been doing it for 20 years, this gal's been doing it for 20. It's always like, wow, man, that's super impressive. Like to be able to one do it for that long, but also to be at this meet for that many times. Super impressive, and obviously very helpful when you're putting on the meet that you have a cadre of officials that you can rely on that are always going to be here during that week. But yeah, I can see, after doing it for a decade, be like, oh yeah, yeah, I'll be there. Like, oh yeah, it's what we do. And it's like, yeah, we have changed it up, buddy. I need you to look at the fine detail again, just like it's the first time ever. So I can imagine that. I was struck, I think it was last year. I was in you guys' office, I want to say on a Wednesday. So before the meet had started. Um, and I was struck by, I probably was in your office for a good hour, maybe an hour and a half, and it was non-stop. It was, this kid who was volunteering coming up to make sure you need a meeting tomorrow at 7:30 at this, like doing the little, I mean, like you've got this big meeting. Here's this kid, God bless him. I just remember, he was a student or something. He was like, so you need me to be at this place at 7:30. And I was like, I know that kid's been told 5 times. I just know it. And here you have to take a minute out and yes, yeah, I need, yep, be here for that. Wear this color. I can't remember if you had a penny or so. I remember, but from there to the phone never stopped ringing. People coming by, like I felt like you guys were so nice to me because it was a little bit like, all right, Mike, you could probably get out of here because we're a little busy. You guys, and I was just, asking questions and looking at the trophies. And, I'm like a kid in a candy store. And you guys are like, this candy store is working right now, Mike. But I was struck by like just, call it the day before, 2 days before the meet started. And it felt like everything was, from small fires to big fires. There's just everything coming at you. So when you said, hey, hopefully there's nothing for me to do during the actual meet because, I've done it all, but there's always something.
Right. Yes. Yeah. So there's never nothing, but I should
There's
arrive.
never nothing.
I should arrive with a clear schedule. Yeah. And
Right.
then there are some like, okay, like I know going in that like somebody added a support person, but it's not on a printed thing. So it's like there's stuff I can do ahead of time to prep. There are going to be a few little places where like I need to be in position at whether it's registration or pro athlete check-in or that like the easiest thing is for me to put myself there to handle the situation that I know is coming. There's a few of those. And other than that, it's like, how much can I prepare ahead of time? How much can I pass on? How much can I, like, one of the biggest things over the years has been just really figuring out, like, okay, these are my things. These are the things that I need to be the person that does these things.
Hmm.
This is how long it's going to take. This is my timeline. The biggest mistake I made, I think, in the first year, maybe two, was I knew what I needed to do, and they weren't in emergency territory until we were right up on top of them. And so I would push and pick up the things that were stressing other people out, right? Help you with this, take on this. But this is happening right now, like, so being able to sort of to be much more firm in like, if I make this timeline for myself, for my things, I need to do them because if the consequence um, is that it will become impossible for me to execute my pieces, then that's not cool. Yeah, so just so figure, learning really do it 1 year and you can say like, well, maybe I'll just be more efficient next year. Do it 2 years and then you can say, this is what it takes. I know this is what it takes. And so like that's also, I think, a piece of what I do is like noting those things, knowing those things, making sure that like some of it is knowing my timeline, my future, the things that need to get done, and where that means like, backdating, like where that means they need to start and sort of my checkpoints along the way. And some of it is even the things that aren't mine, but knowing that they need to keep happening. And so at the right moment saying like, hey, where are we on this? Has this started? Making sure that the other piece I do is like with all of our major vendors, all of our big orders, any of that's like I do the Penn, I deal with the Penn system in terms of entering and
Hmm.
paying. So making sure that those things are like we've done all of them, we've
Hmm.
checked all of it, and it's when things get crazy, like the details can't get forgotten.
When you put your head in your pillow at night, maybe it's during the summer, so the Penn Relays is over, and there's many other things that you're doing as well outside of Penn Relays for sure, as it relates to our sport. What gives you the greatest satisfaction? And as you're thinking about that, maybe you kind of smile, so maybe you already have that. But like for me, I think about, when I was a coach, it was easier to identify. It's like, oh, the kids, when they improve and they have a good experience, the student experience, student athlete experience, that gives me great joy. Like a kid had whether they were all American or not, if they had a good time at my school and have great experiences and can, tell their friends when they're adults how great track was for them, I loved it. As somebody who works for an equipment manufacturer, that was a little harder, right? It's harder for me to see the kids, improving outside of a few, implements and vaulting poles. Now my satisfaction comes from like when I see a coach tweet out or a Facebook message or they, email me and say, oh man, we had a great meet. My kids PR'd, we had a fun time. We won, those kind of things. That's my satisfaction because it's like, oh, they got to do the thing that they love, coach kids, and didn't have to worry about the equipment. The equipment was spot on, and they didn't have to worry about it. That's my satisfaction. When you think about your role and you think about the experiences you had as a student athlete and as a coach, you've seen a lot of different sides of our sport. When you, like I said, when that head hits that pillow and you're like, man, I love that I'm a part of, or I get to see. What's your satisfaction with your role as the director of ops for Penn Relays and UPenn Track and Field?
Yeah, so I think it's two parts. I think like when I think like purely professionally, um, I really think that one of the biggest things I do is think about what people need and how we can support them. And so a lot of that is, I mean, similar. It's like if we figured out how to do this in a way that none of us were losing sleep. That we weren't that that people weren't just like, yeah, so like there's so much stress and there are these stress points and these moments where it gets tough and it's busy, but if we figured out how to do this in a way where people felt supported in those moments, that's to me perfect, like in terms of my colleagues, people I
Yeah.
work, that's my biggest thing. And I think larger, like the way that I've been able to somehow carve out a whole life connected to the sport in different ways over the years. Like, so this past weekend was incredible. There was a club track meet at Penn. And it was just this like overlay of so many different like segments of the sport that I've been connected to all in one space all at once. And it was like officials were there fishing that I've worked with all year. Our timers were there. Like, these are the people that I work with. The club that I used to coach was putting it on. So everybody from that club was there doing it. I raced the Masters Mile. So there were people I knew, like, but there's people I know from my running, from competing, from working, from like I run on a different club team now, an all women's club team that's unlike any team I've ever been a part of. It's like finding this team was the most surprising and wonderful, life-changing thing that I did at 39, right? Like, and so just to and my son was there watching, and like it was just so like all of these different parts of the track and field, cross country, running world that I've gotten to be connected with. Anytime that I get to like combine them. Anytime
Yeah.
that a couple of those worlds collide and show up in the same place is really fun and satisfying to me. And that happens at Penn Relays.
Yeah, that's a pretty cool stew, right? You as an athlete, you as a coach, you as a DO, the officials, it's kind of this amalgamation that makes a really tasty dish, a really cool experience. That's fascinating. I love that. All right, Claire, last question. It's not necessarily a fair question because I didn't really prep you for it, so it's okay. Uh, Anything new this year? When we're listening to this is the week of Penn Relays. It may be small. It may be what we would consider small, I should say. Like moving the 4x4s to me is like, oh, that's not that big of a deal. And behind the scenes, that was a huge deal, and a huge deal for the girls to run on that day too. By the way, anything as we're looking forward to this week that's new, or point out like, hey, we're running the first 110 year old 100-meter dash, which that race amazes me. All those 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100, those are just fascinating. Anything new we can look for this week?
No. Which is like great in my world.
Right, right, right.
Um, so to be fair, at this point that we're recording, we don't know the entry. So like what are the hot things? Like
Yeah,
we don't
sure.
know that yet.
Good
So
point.
but actually I think the fact that we made some big changes and then some small changes, and we sort of toyed with moving things around, and have gotten to a point now in this our fourth year with the core staff, where we didn't change anything huge, is so wonderful.
Yeah, yeah,
And so hopefully it's an even smoother product. Hopefully it's, actually heading into the meet, I will know what the hot events are, and I'll be able to watch them, right? Which is like such a treat.
right.
We've spent a few years of like feeling behind the scenes, behind the eight ball,
Yeah.
and we're moving a million miles a minute. And so I am hopeful. I am still, as we record in March, thoroughly optimistic that we will enter the week and the meet with a little more space on our plates.
I love it. The way I kind of heard you describing that in the previous question, the work you do and the work the team, there's a whole big team behind you and beside you. This whole process is to make this meet this week mundane. If there is something that's a fire put, that's not a good thing that there's a fire. Like, thank God you are there to put the fire out. But do we have the schedule right? Do we have the logistics right? Do we have the officials correct? That you can go and, as a coach, you can get your athletes out there and perform and coach. And as the athletes, you can get out there and perform. You're not worried about, did the official not show up? All that stuff is happening in the background. And so to make it mundane, which sounds kind of weird to say that, but like it happens, it goes. And then the athletes can be the star, the thing that we talk about, not, piece of equipment breaking down, or officials they didn't know to show up or whatnot. Just making it smooth operations all the way through.
Well, I think the truth is that, like we said before, there will always be fires. There will
Sure.
always be things that go wrong. Whether it's the weather, or whether it's whatever it is. But having the right people in the right places,
Mhm.
to be able to handle whatever gets thrown at us, that's success, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It's not that nothing goes wrong. It's that when something went
Yeah.
wrong, We handled it well.
Good point. That's great. I can relate to that as an equipment guy for sure. Claire, thank you so much. Obviously, my passion, our passion here at Gill Athletics is the coaches. I mean, that's, we were created from a coach, Harry Gill, and, a lot of us are former coaches and athletes. So, our great passion is empowering coaches with innovative equipment. However, to do that job, that responsibility to help increase their positive impact that they can make on young people, we need people behind the scenes, if you will. We need director of ops. We need officials. We need marketers. We need all of these to make our great sport continue to move forward. So it's always important to me that, 99% of our guests here are going to be coaches for the obvious reasons, but I do like to showcase the other people that are right there. You're supporting coaches. Coaches can't do what they do without the help that you do. The Penn Relays doesn't happen without the things that you do and the team does there. So just grateful from all of us at Gill Athletics, man. Just so thankful that, I almost said I kind of wish he'd stayed as a coach because, again, that's our great passion. But certainly, maybe the better way of saying is certainly happy and ecstatic that you stayed in our sport, that you're not, first of all, that you're not in politics, but more so that you're in our sport, affecting young people in positive. And boy, the Penn Relays from almost 0 to 100, you're affecting athletes of all ages and stages, and that's a huge deal for our sport. And we're really grateful for you, Claire.
Thank you. It's been fun.
And it continues to be fun. We're not at the end of the chapter. We're barely
Oh,
in the
no,
middle
no,
of the book here.
no.
So Claire, thank you so much again. The most important, most valuable thing you can give me is your time. And boy, I asked for your time in the exact wrong amount time of the year. You are hustling and bustling right now, and we're excited to be out there and to participate in the relays, and excited to see more amazing things every year. It's like, how do you top last year? And somehow you guys set the stage for athletes and coaches to do that. So we're super excited to be out there. So thank you for your time, and really just grateful for you. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Mike.